Chapter 21. Pornography. The Mass. Castration of divine masculine power. In today's world, pornography is the mass castration of divine masculine power. In Canadian prisons, the inmates are sometimes given pizza and porn nights. Sometimes the public is outraged by this, but I can see why the prison system would want to sedate the violent, hyper-masculine, sexually frustrated, violent, and prison-gay population in jails today. I have heard that man produces upwards of 100 million sperm a day. Other numbers on sperm counts as per Google are: a fertile male human ejaculates between 2 and 5 milliliters of semen, on average about a teaspoon. In each milliliter, there are normally about 100 million sperm. If the concentration falls below 20 million sperm per milliliter, there is usually some trouble with fertility. When a man ejaculates, he expends tremendous energy, actionable energy, sexual energy, and divine creative energy. You can see the difference in the power of male masculinity and this divine creative force in the difference between an ox and a bull. A bull is a strong, powerful male cow. He has huge horns, and you can see the viciousness of a bull in bullfights and at rodeos with how powerful and aggressive these animals are. A bull is usually the alpha male on the farm, and his job is to impregnate as many females as possible. In short, his job is to 1. Fight other male cows for dominance, and 2. Fuck all the female cows in the population. Very masculine, very dominant, very alpha. When you cut the bull's balls off, castrate him, and take away his divine masculine power, he becomes an ox. A big, sedated, easy-to-control animal. A work animal, not aggressive, and not much of a fighter, in fact, not much of an anything. If the ox could play video games and order pizza, he would be living in his mother's basement playing video games and staying inside the house all day. Such is the struggle of being a modern man. Bulls are dangerous and hard to control. Oxen are docile and easy to control. It's no wonder that pornography has crept into the popular culture for what I believe to be a control mechanism over young men to keep them from rising in power. Pornography, which is cheap, free, and abundant on any smartphone, tablet, laptop, or desktop computer, is instant. There are no waiting times, available in high-definition quality video, and there is literally an unlimited amount of porn out there for free or nearly free. And a man could literally die masturbating himself to death trying to watch it all or see every girl, much like a rat in a cage pushing a button that hits his dopamine receptors as much as possible until he drops dead from exhaustion. Rats have self-stimulated themselves to death in studies, and the modern man is just like the rat, masturbating into a hellish existence on Earth through mediocrity and lack of results. To live a life of mediocrity is not much of a life at all. You might as well masturbate to death like the rat. In human history, powerful kings have had harems of up to a few hundred women. Alexander the Great had over 450 concubines and several wives in his different conquered city-states, which he renamed Alexandria. Yes, Alexander named several cities Alexandria after himself. This was very confusing to look at on a map. A tribal king in the ancient world would have his wife or wives, then several concubines. And as the ruler and the king, the alpha male, he would naturally need guards to keep his concubines and wives safe. So the king would castrate a few of his guards to make them eunuchs so they would have no sexual drive to tamper with the women. Just like the alpha male bulls and the oxen, the king would use castrated men to guard his women, so his seed and his sexual dominance could be enforced upon the women of his harem, and his guards could not be caught sampling the merchandise. Today, with men masturbating into oblivion at no financial cost, what we have is a mass daily mini-castration or a mini-rape of these men. and the results are devastating over the long term. In Napoleon Hill's legendary book Think and Grow Rich, there is a chapter on sexual transmutation. To paraphrase Hill as an interviewer of the 500 richest men in the world in the early 1900s, all of the richest men in the world at the time used a technique called sexual transmutation. Transmutation is when you deny yourself sexual release and transmute the desire for sex into money, results, and real power. Sexual energy, specifically male sexual energy, is one of the most powerful forces on the planet. It is man's actionable energy, creative energy, which allows a man to create like a god, command like a king, and work like a slave to meet his goals and achieve his whims. Turn your lust into gifts. When a man sees a beautiful woman, it is natural for him to feel energy in his body, which he usually interprets as sexual desire. Rather than dispersing this energy in mental fantasy, a man should learn to circulate his heightened energy. He should breathe fully, circulating the energy fully throughout his body. He should treat his heightened energy as a gift which could heal and rejuvenate his body, and, through his service, heal the world. Through these means, his desire is converted into fullness of heart. His lust is converted into service. His desire is not converted by denying sexual attraction, but by enjoying it fully, circulating it through his body without allowing it to stagnate as mental fantasy, and returning it to the world from his heart. Usually, the motivation behind sexual transmutation for a man is a woman, usually the one woman he loves in his heart and mind, hopefully his wife, but it could also be the other woman, a mistress. Nonetheless, sexual transmutation is important, and I have personally used sexual transmutation in my most successful times in my life. The first time I practiced it, I made $42,000 in a week and wrote a book in 30 days. This book and my previous book, The Close, have been written in the last month by practicing sexual transmutation and celibacy. In the last 30 days, I have produced over 200,000 words of text, in addition to running 2 multi-million-dollar companies, planning and executing a national speaking tour, and managing several internet businesses, plus managing the buying of 1 investment property per week. That may sound impressive to you, it may not, but my production, especially in the writing arena, is more output in 1 month than I have produced in the last 5 years combined. The creative results I have achieved in the writing arena are a result of saying no to random women and no to pornography, and keeping my sexual energy to be used on my own creative and constructive endeavors. As the famous saying goes, create like a god, command like a king, work like a slave. If you're masturbating into oblivion and blowing your load every day or twice a day, you, sir, are an ox and not a bull. You will instead create nothing, command nothing, do nothing, and be nothing. You need to have your balls to do things that require balls, which is most things that are adventurous, dangerous, risky, or exciting in life. The work of a man is usually dangerous and filled with risk. It takes balls. Don't waste your own balls for pleasure. Instead, save your balls for the danger, the risk, the battle, and the adventure. Ejaculation should be converted or consciously chosen. There are many physical and spiritual reasons why ejaculation should be converted into non-ejaculatory whole body, brain, and heart orgasms. But there are also relational reasons. When a man has no control over his ejaculation, he cannot meet his woman sexually or emotionally. She knows she can deplete him, weaken him, empty him of life force. She has won. When a man ejaculates easily, he creates ongoing distrust in his woman. At a subtle level, she feels he cannot be trusted. She and the world can deplete and depolarize him easily. This subtle distrust will pervade the relationship. She will not only doubt him, but actually act to undermine his actions in the world. By undermining him, she demonstrates and tests his weakness, but she also hopes that through such tests he can learn to remain full. Men have accomplished tremendous feats, explored the earth, gone into space, created the atom bomb, the cure for polio, split the atom, created massive bodies of work and literature, built skyscrapers, sea vessels, submarines, invented cars, combustible engines, ion batteries, computers, the internet, and I would wager all of my money and wealth today to say that those men did it all for a woman or gay boyfriend whom they loved. If you don't know your purpose, discover it. Now, without a conscious life purpose, a man is totally lost, drifting, adapting to events rather than creating events. Without knowing his life purpose, a man lives a weakened, impotent existence, perhaps eventually becoming even sexually impotent, or prone to mechanical and disinterested sex. All divine creation, all invention, all innovation, it was all to have an orgasm with a woman, the original burst of energy that creates life, the divine masculine energy that is the seed required to create life and other humans. Women have tremendous power in the world because of their sacred life-giving energy and ability to create life. But the masculine side is powerful as well. I have given great thought to this and some points on masculine sexual energy. 1. Women can have sex even when they are not necessarily aroused or turned on. They have a vagina, which gets wet or not, but sex is still possible. Because of this, women can be violated, raped, or penetrated by a man even if they aren't interested. 2. A man must have an erection and choose a woman to have an orgasm. If he doesn't find a woman sexy, there is no sex. His impotence will render sex impossible. This is the reversal of a woman, where she can be chosen or raped violently by a man's erection. 3. If a man isn't into the woman, there will be no erection and thus no orgasm. 4. If a man isn't into the woman, he won't even get fully hard. 5. A man usually ejaculates if he likes the woman enough. If he doesn't like her, he won't ejaculate. 6. A woman may or may not have an orgasm. It's up to her mentally and emotionally to handle that, and the man must last long enough and be present enough for her to reach orgasm. 7. The male orgasm nearly always happens. The female orgasm is optional. Everything I have written above is modern sexual protocol, and especially from the world of casual hookup culture. But it's interesting to note that 1. The woman must choose the man to have sex, but 2. The man must choose the woman to get an erection. What is sexual is what gives a man an erection. If there is no inequality, no violation, no dominance, no force, there is no sexual arousal. If the man has been masturbating all day, watching too much porn, and has a million young porn stars in his brain who are all hotter than the girl he is with, there is no chance of an erection. In fact, he probably isn't even going to call a woman, talk to a woman, or go out. He's going to order pizza, stay home in mom's basement, and play his video games. This is a violation of sexual transmutation and creative energy. The man described above cannot invent anything. He has no creative energy stored, and he can't be effective in his work or serve his life purpose. He can't love his woman and has no energy to protect or love his family. The base energy that makes him a strong, virile man is gone, robbed by himself. As with all addictions and all sins, sins are a waste of energy. This is not a sacred book that relies on you to believe my arguments on blind faith simply because they are stated in the book. This is a secular book based on logic and reason and results. I present the logical arguments, and you can make your own decisions and come to your conclusions. The sins of the world across all religions are simply a waste of energy that deplete your limited creative life force on stupid things, such as lust, gluttony, greed, pride, wrath, sloth, and envy. They zap your life of its energy and will bring you closer to death. Sins bring you closer to death, but virtues bring you closer to life. In each choice we make each day, we must choose between life or death. It is better to waste your seed in the belly of a whore than to waste in thine own hand. Start thinking of yourself like a battery with a limited amount of energy, a limited number of heartbeats. I have heard arguments for an unlimited amount of energy and unlimited amount of heartbeats, but that seems unlikely because we will all die one day. No human is immortal. We all have a lifespan much like a battery. Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good. Do you have a limited number of orgasms? Some would argue that you do. You will die at some point. Your time is limited by an unknown fixed point in the future. Between now and the point of death, you have a limited number of orgasms, a limited number of breaths, a limited number of heartbeats, a limited number of shits. And in the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, by Mark Manson, you also have only a limited number of fucks to give. Don't waste your finite time and energy on this planet masturbating in your mom's basement. When I was 12, I used to stay up and watch the 18-plus shows on late-night TV. Of course, the Howard Stern TV show was on one of the channels on late at night, and in the 1990s, Howard Stern was a challenging public figure who liked to stir things up and create controversy. Today, nearly 30 years later, he is tame by today's standards. Howard Stern made a little sideshow called Porn Jeopardy, or Porn Trivia, where two degenerate men would compete to answer the most porn trivia questions. These questions were very specific about which girl or guy was in which scene of which movie, etc. Now, this was the 90s, when porn was hard to get. If you wanted to watch porn in the 90s, you had to get in your car late at night, drive down to the porno store, walk in, risk your neighbor seeing you in the CD store, pick out a movie, stare down the girl who works at the store, let her judge you on what you are renting, hand her $5 for the movie rental, drive home with your movie in a brown paper bag, and pop that VHS tape into your VCR, watch the video, then return it the next day in broad daylight, hoping no one will see you. A great effort compared to the instant-free, easy access to porn today. This was a major effort back then compared to the modern world of porn, where you can have 482 million results delivered in 0.27 seconds that Google offers you on your smartphone at any time of day. I actually typed the word porn into Google while typing out this book to see how many results would come and how fast. So these two men are playing porn trivia, and of course, one of them works in a porno store. He answers every question and wins the game show hands down. The other guy answered roughly a third of the questions correctly. At the end of the game show, Howard Stern congratulated the winner of porn trivia, and then he paused for a moment and said, "No, actually, you're a major loser for knowing all the answers to porn trivia. If the majority of men are porn-addicted perverts with porn in their pockets by virtue of a smartphone and books for women like 50 Shades of Grey top the bestseller list when it is full of sadomasochism, bondage, butt plugs, vaginal sex, anal sex, oral sex, and a myriad of other pieces of kink delivered at an accessible grade 7 level at every library, airport, and bookstore in the world for young girls, what is going to happen next? I fear to even peek into the future. The Romans in their decline had legendary feasts in which the population would eat until they were full, force themselves to vomit, and then eat some more. In modern eating contests, eating until you puke and then continuing to eat is aptly called Roman rules. The ancient Romans would have a Roman orgy, where men and women would just turn into a massive ball of bodies having sex in every which way. This was the decline of the once intolerant empire that had become tolerant. The Romans had become amoral and weak in their decline. Then the violent barbarians came from the north, an intolerant warrior society who stormed the gates of the once world-powerful empire and slaughtered the Romans, and that was it for Rome. The orgy and expense of sexual energy ended in blood and a reign of massive destruction. Tolerant societies are usually violently taken or enslaved by intolerant societies at some point. Such are the cycles of history. Just like the ox, men today are giving up their sacred sexual energy through porn, which satiates the hunger of a man, the drive to succeed. Too many men nowadays are settling for less, saying, "It's good enough for me." The minimalism movement is a derivative of the "good enough for me" mentality. The tiny house movement, which are not tiny houses but trailers, is a "good enough for me" attitude. This is an opt out of power, wealth, and success that men need to have to be men. I'm not saying you should be the most powerful man in the world or the richest man in the world, but I believe you should always be pushing for your potential in those areas and opting into competition and avoiding giving up. It's unmanly to opt out or give up. A man has to try, and try again. Forward, and forward some more. The waste of male sexual energy en masse today not only blocks the ability to try, but also blocks the ability to think and grow rich, as Napoleon Hill has titled his masterpiece on building wealth and success in a man's life. Thinking is the hardest work of all, and that is why few people do it. Thinking truly is hard work, and most men go through their entire lives without stopping to think about anything. All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. The greatest innovations in my life have come from periods of my ability to sit still. Some men meditate, some pray, some slip into states of semi-consciousness. I practice fasting. Whatever you do to sit still in a room and do nothing allows you to think and access the infinite intelligence of the universe, as Napoleon Hill calls it, or God, as the religions of the world would call it. Porn and wasting your sexual energy disrupt the energy needed to connect your mind to the spiritual realm to think and create, and that can only come from sitting still in a room alone. All great leaders and innovators have had their great inventions come from periods of sitting in a room alone. Robert Kiyosaki wrote his hit book, the #1 personal finance book of all time, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, alone in a cabin with nothing but a Macintosh computer, a tape recorder, and scraps of paper. Bill Gates planned Microsoft alone in a hotel room with 6 yellow notepads on which to scribble his thoughts. 50 Cent turned his life around in prison, got his rap career together, made a decision to get out of drug dealing, and resolved to get rich or die trying by being alone in a jail cell. Hitler wrote his manifesto in prison and became a great orator and visionary while sitting alone in prison. Nelson Mandela achieved his great work in prison. Jordan Belfort wrote The Wolf of Wall Street in prison, arguably his best work of his life. It relaunched his tarnished, broken, and failed career. Newton discovered gravity alone on his mother's land after he fled the city due to a plague that was sweeping the land. Moses came down from the mountain after 40 days of fasting with the 10 Commandments straight from mouth of God. I wrote my previous book, The Close, 7 levels selling in 4 days in Costa Rica after an 18-day fast and solitude in the jungle. The list can go on and on forever, but this divine creative energy cannot be accessed if you are blowing your load every day worshiping the goddesses of porn and mopping his seeds of creation off your belly every day. The religions of the world agree that a man should live in one of two ways: 1. Single and celibate, or 2. Married. A single and celibate man can save his sexual energy and pour it into his craft, his purpose, his endeavors, become a success and attract the woman of his dreams. A married man can practice sexual transmutation and the battery effect with his wife, in which love and sex, when mixed, will energize a man, heal his physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual wounds, and energize him to push further into his purpose. The 3 purposes of sex. Our sexual center has 3 potential purposes or functions. 1. Generation, procreation. 2. Regeneration, health creation. 3. Spiritualization, immortality. Pascal Beverly Randolph, M.M. D. was perhaps the most prolific writer on this subject and termed the spiritualized sex teachings the mysteries of Euless, as outlined in his book, The Immortality of Love. Freeman B. Dowd, a student of Dr. Randolph, summarized the esoteric nature of the sexual forces this way: the creative power of man is due to the sexual nature, from whence his being is derived. The energy of the soul pours through the sex nature, and the volume of energy is in proportion to the capacity of the nature through which it flows, being drawn from the limitless ocean of energy with which the soul is connected. The law of exchange, criteria for the one-flesh union. To obtain the regeneration and spiritualization benefits described above, specific aspects of the sexual embrace must be met. These criteria include both a physical component and the emotional love intent. The physical component of the one-flesh union requires that intercourse be carried out as God designed, with the male organ in the vagina of his mate at the time of orgasm, with nothing to prevent or compromise the exchange of the physical fluids and resultant spiritual energy that occur during climax. Within the male and female sexual fluids exist hormones and natural chemicals beneficial to the physical and emotional stability of both individuals. It is as if the husband and wife were each poles of a battery, and their fluids were the electrolytes that permit the transmission of energy produced between them. Science is beginning to confirm the importance of the direct physical exchange of male and female fluids during sexual intercourse. A study in the Archives of Sexual Behavior, 2002, June 31st, Volume 3, pages 289 to 93, demonstrated that the women who were directly exposed to semen during intercourse, without interference from condoms, were less likely to be depressed. The researchers in this study concluded that such a response is due to the mood-altering hormones in semen that are absorbed through the vagina. It is essential that nothing in the sexual embrace prevent this mutual fluid exchange from taking place in the vagina, because regeneration and spiritualization cannot take place without this exchange any more than a battery can function without its electrolytes. Any sexual practice that excludes this exchange diminishes our spiritual potential and loss of soul energy. Such common practices include, but are not limited to, condoms, masturbation, oral sex, anal sex, and the pull-out method. Both the Old and New Testament biblical writers tried to instruct the people of their time period concerning the importance of the law of sexual exchange. If a man can obey the sexual laws of either 1. Single and celibate, or 2. Married and in love, he can unlock the vast spiritual power, creative power, and regenerative powers, and become much stronger at an exponential multiplier than he is alone. A metaphor used to describe the synergy of men and women who are married and working together as partners says that 2 oxen, quote, equally yoked is equal to 12. The two become one flesh and synergistically powerful, where 1 + 1 does not equal 2. Instead, 1 + 1 = 312. That is the power of synergy and unlocking spiritual power through the proper use of sex. As a business coach, I know from firsthand experience that married men with children always perform better than single men, single women, two male business partners, or any other configuration of people in setting up and growing a business. Married women with kids are also very powerful, but they usually play the feminine role of wife and mother and send their husbands in for business coaching or play a support role to him. Divorced or single women forced into the masculine role will coach with me. But my clients with the most power to draw on are always married men with kids because of the reasons outlined above. Spiritual power and sexual power are what allow man to transcend his physical power and accomplish amazing feats that are unthinkable or impossible. Who you marry, which is the ultimate partnership, is enormously important in determining the happiness in your life and your success. Buffett told Forbes that his first wife, Susan Buffett, was one of his greatest teachers, along with his late father Howard and late mentor Benjamin Graham. The most important person by far in that respect is your spouse, said Buffett in a conversation with Bill Gates earlier this year. I can't overemphasize how important that is. Buffett and Susan were married until Susan passed away in 2004. Notably, she was the 17th richest woman in the world, worked as a director for Berkshire Hathaway, and served as the Buffett Foundation's president. Buffett remarried in 2006 when he wed longtime friend Astrid Manx. Berkshire Hathaway CEO Warren Buffett believes that making money means nothing without having another person, such as a spouse, to share the wealth with, according to a recent interview with Forbes. It's much more fun achieving things in life with a partner, there's no question about it, Buffett, 87, recently told the magazine. It's really a huge advantage from a personal standpoint to have a wonderful partner. That's true, obviously, in marriage. I mean, that's the most important decision that you make, he added. Who you marry, which is the ultimate partnership, is enormously important in determining the happiness in your life and your success, and I was lucky in that respect. And there is scientific research to back up Buffett's advice. A study published by Carnegie Mellon University found that people with supportive spouses are more likely to give themselves the chance to succeed. There were two turning points in my life, Buffett said, in the HBO documentary Becoming Warren Buffett, one when I came out of the womb and one when I met Susie, as he called Susan. The two met when Susan was going to be rooming with Buffett's youngest sister as a college student at Northwestern University, she says, in an old video clip shared in the documentary. So I walk into their house. Warren was sitting in this chair, and he made some sarcastic quip, she recalled. So I made one back. I thought, who is this jerk? Buffett told Forbes that Susan taught him a lot about investing. He also credits Susan with teaching him to open himself up to the world emotionally. I just got very, very, very lucky. I was a lopsided person, Buffett said in the documentary. And it took a while, but she just stood there with a little watering can and just nourished me along and changed me. Though you may not have a choice in determining how you were born and raised, Buffett said, you have something to say about who you marry. Bill Gates, one of the world's richest men, has been long married to his wife, Melinda Gates. Jeff Bezos, also one of the world's richest men, is married to Mackenzie Bezos. On the flip side, divorce doesn't just take 50% of your wealth. Divorce usually destroys 70% of your wealth and also your mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual self. A divorce can rob you of all your momentum in life, your purpose, your business, your company, your children, your family, and drag out for 5, 10, or even 20 years after the marriage separates. I know several men who had divorces last longer than their marriages. That is why Buffett, Gates, and Bezos, 3 of the world's richest men, would all say marry the right person. Far too many people are looking for the right person instead of trying to be the right person. The two ways for a man to live sexually are 1. Single and celibate, or 2. Married and in love. This is so important to a man's success that in the early 1900s, the government tried to outlaw bachelors. Bachelors, single men, were responsible for all the drinking, whoring, gambling, fighting, violence, rapes, stealing, and crimes. Thus the government tried to outlaw bachelors. Bachelors do not produce as much as married men and usually get into trouble because of their vices. Throughout history and across cultures, up until the 1950s when teenagers were invented, as they are an American post-World War II invention, both men and women went from living with their parents straight to marriage. There was no perilous middle period of bachelorhood in which men get perpetually stuck. Where are all these sexual trends for young men going? I recently read a collection of articles online that illustrated the utter destruction of love, virtue, and the proper use of sex. Pornography is now so rampant and so available that young teenagers, even tweens, like 12-year-olds and younger, are watching hardcore porn on their smartphones. They aren't just watching softcore porn, they are watching hardcore gangbangs, anal, BDSM, and crazy things that no 12-year-old could or should ever imagine. This exposure is nothing but pure evil, and this type of content was never intended for 12-year-old children. If an adult male was to expose a 12-year-old to that kind of content, he would be thrown in jail as a sex criminal. Why aren't the companies who expose such content online to children not treated as sex criminals then? This is wrong on every level, and nothing good can come from it. When I was 12 in the 1990s, you would be lucky to get a peck on the cheek or a little kiss from a girl. According to the collection of articles that are coming out today on various blogs, young girls who are 12 are now bartering with young boys, and they are trading blowjobs for their first kiss. This is not the Cinderella story, the Snow White story, or the Beauty and the Beast story that Walt Disney sold to the little girls. No one is singing "Someday My Prince Will Come" in this scene. Cinderella didn't blow the prince for a kiss. But this is where we are today. Hardcore penetration of an orifice in exchange for your first kiss. Pure evil. When I read this, my heart broke. It seemed evil and twisted for a young 12-year-old boy to broker a blowjob done in advance, just so that an innocent little girl could get her first kiss. A kiss is innocent. Little girls want their first kiss. It's fun. It's cute. A blowjob is explicitly adult. It's sex. It's penetration. It's hardcore. Those are two incompatible ideas for a first exchange, but such things are real today. The little girls and the little boys all have hardcore porn, and sex is no longer sacred. This is fatally damaging for the fabric of society from the most basic level, and my heart breaks to hear that this is the level we have degraded to. Someone has to be on top. Why not you?